Hey guys, this is Maples here and welcome to my first YouTube video. It's actually going to be part 1 of my current Barbarian build for Monster Power 10. However, this build will work on any Monster Power. Obviously, this is just a general build that I shall be using. I'm going to go ahead and preface this by saying that there's a lot of information out there already made available by Barbarians, such as comparing, Congor, etc. And they've made a lot of information available, various people on forums, and some of the information in this video may be located on other places, the Diablo forums, on YouTube, Twitch, etc. If I don't give these people credit, they don't remember everybody who has helped contribute to this build, I apologize. This has been kind of a collaboration of research done on my own through various people's builds, as well as build testing on various monster powers to kind of find a build that I enjoyed playing, and that's what's kind of led to this. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on part 1 of the build, which is going to cover the actual build, gear requirements, and the rotation, hopefully, if I can fit it into this first part. And then the second part of the video is going to have an actual demonstration of how to use the build on a typical Monster Power 10 run. There's maybe a few champion packs. I might go try to do like a keyboard or something like that. I haven't decided yet, but we're gonna go ahead and jump right into the build. So first we'll start with the abilities. I think most people like to know what they're gonna be using right off the bat, so we'll start with the passives. First, we have Ruthless, pretty standard Barbarian passive. It just gives you an additional 5% crit and 50% critical hit damage. Very nice addition. If you don't have the gear to support using this, I would suggest switching it out for perhaps Nerves of Steel for the additional armor based off your vitality, or Tough as Nails, or some other defensive ability that will give you a little bit more survivability. But if you can't afford it, the extra damage from it is very nice. Second passive is Bloodthirst, which just gives you a 3% lifesteal. It's very nice, obviously. One of the staples of the build, however, if you can get your lifesteal high enough, around 5 to 6, which is what I'm going to mention during the gear part, you won't need Bloodthirst, and at which point picking up Animosity will typically be better. Animosity for the Fury generation and Maximum Fury, or you can go with Brawler to get the additional 30% increased damage so long as you're chain pulling. However, Brawler loses its efficiency whenever you're doing single pulls, so on things like Uber's runs or fighting a leftover mob or a keyboard, it's not going to be nearly as useful. So I would suggest Animosity just for the easy transition. However, you can go with either one if you don't need the passive lifesteal. And the next ability is kind of a requirement of this build, is Weapons Master. For those of you who don't know what it does, it gives an additional effect depending on the weapon that you have in your main hand. This will also work for two-handed weapons, so it doesn't really matter if it's the one-handed or two-handed version. You can go ahead and read on here. You can pause the video and read and see what each of them do. Obviously, this build, I'm using a Scorn, so the 10% increased critical hit chance is pretty crucial. You'll find out as the video goes on that critical hit chance is a very important stat for this build, so it's something that you really want to have. Jumping into the active abilities, we have Frenzy as a generator, and this is where it differentiates from a lot of the other builds, because a lot of them you'll see using the Bash Run with Instigation or Cleave with the additional Fury generation or the Explosion. I like to use Frenzy for 2 reasons. Because at 5 stacks of Frenzy, you get the 75% increase in attack speed, which is just very nice to have. And with the Maniac rune, you get an additional 4% damage when you're at max stacks. It's very easy to stack, and I've actually found that incorporating Frenzy into the rotation is a very easy thing to do. So I began using it. I feel like it's a really good generator. If you're not fond of it, you can use other ones, but this is really kind of what makes the build is the combination of Frenzy and the next build, Hammer of the Ancients, her ability. And this is going to be your main damage source. You're going to deal a Frontal Cone for 325% damage, 406 with the Smash rune, and every 5 Fury that you have gives you an additional 1% chance to crit with the ability. So you have a really nice amount of damage here. You can get high numbers with it. It's just generally a good way to clear. As far as your action bar skills, we have Wrath of the Berserker, pretty stable build in most Barbarian builds. It's just a nice cooldown. It gives you an additional crit, attack speed, dodge chance, and movement speed for 15 seconds on a 2-minute cooldown. Now, this is where I will stop for a second and talk about Wrath of the Berserker, because most Barbarians will use this build. However, there's two things. If you're not comfortable with Thrive on Chaos, there is an alternative. Thrive on Chaos is every 25 Fury that you gain while under the effect gives you another second of the duration. You can theoretically keep Wrath of the Berserker up for the entire game if you're always generating Fury. However, if your Fury is a max, any Fury generated afterwards does not count. So you have to be constantly spending and gaining Fury at a regular rate to keep Wrath of the Berserker from falling off. So if you're not comfortable with this, if you're just starting out, the rune of choice will be Insanity. And what this does is it will give you 100% additional damage whenever you use Wrath of the Berserker. And instead of using this as an active ability that you'll keep up, you will use this as a cooldown for taking out elite packs. It is just as effective. You don't need Wrath of the Berserker to survive. Maybe on higher monster powers you'll want to consider Thrive on Chaos, but for the most part, popping it to take out champion and elite packs can take them out very quickly if your gear allows. So that's something to keep in mind. For max ability, I'm using Warcry with the Impunity rune, which gives me a armor buff for 20% for 60 seconds and a 20% all resist buff with the rune. This will also affect me and my allies and generate 20 Fury per use. I use this because my alt resist is fairly low, and I typically run a lot of public games with various people. Something to note is your allies are affected by this Warcry ability. So if their gear isn't as good as yours, or if you need the all resist, it's definitely the one you want to use. If you don't typically run it or you don't need it, an alternative is Overpower with the Killing Spree rune. And this is a no-cost ability that will do AoE damage for a small amount and give you 10% critical hit damage with the rune for 6 seconds. This, or critical hit chance, apologies. This can get your critical hit chance pretty high, and for every crit that you get, the cooldown on Overpower is lowered by 1 second. So you can keep that up fairly often and be able to deal out a lot of damage. You can also go with Sprint Route, which is just a movement speed increase. And you could either go with Run with the Wind, which will drop tornadoes behind you, or Marathon, which just increases the duration and the movement speed for it. But for the time being, I'm going with the Warcry. Now, the next two abilities here are kind of necessary for this build. First, we have Rend, which is a AoE bleed for 700 weapon damage over 5 seconds. And I'm using the Bloodlust rune, which gives you 9% lifesteal for the damage done by Rend. This is very crucial for this build because you will constantly be keeping Rend up. You'll constantly be dealing a large amount of damage with it and being able to get a lot of life back. It makes you very tanky. I've been able to sit in multiple arcane sentries, multiple desecrations, and it's just no problem. So if you have that ability with Bloodthirst, a little bit of lifesteal on your gear, even without Bloodthirst, if you have a high enough lifesteal, it's really hard to take you down. So it's just generally an all-around good ability. And then we have Battle Rage, and this is a shout that will not affect your party members, so that's something to keep in mind. It will only benefit you. Gives you an additional 15% damage and 3% critical hit chance. So again, crit, always great. And this is with the End of the Fray rune, very stable part of most Barbarian builds. You will get a additional 15 Fury for every crit that you get. So if you can't tell, critical hit chance, very important for this build. You're getting a lot of Fury, a lot of crits, and that's going to be the main part of this build. So now that we've kind of covered the different abilities here, we're going to jump right into the gear requirements. Now for my personal build, I have currently with Warcry, you can see the all resist here. My lowest one's 570, I have 197k damage. That's not a requirement. The all resist, the vitality that you need, the strength, damage, all of that is going to vary depending on what monster power you are playing at. If you're playing at monster power 10, you're going to want a high damage, high life, high all resist. If you're playing at monster power 1, you don't really need that much. You can determine that entirely on what you're playing on. There are only 2 stats that you really need to focus on to make this build work regardless, and that's critical hit chance and lifesteal. For critical hit chance, the lowest that I would go is about 40%. Ideally you want 50, but at 40 you can at least generate enough critical hits to benefit from the end of the fray passive, as well as if you're using overpower, being able to reduce the cooldown on that, getting the additional crits is also very nice to the lifesteal, and just generally all around good. So about 40% is where you want to be. And then for lifesteal, I would aim for between 4 to 6 lifesteal, depending on how you do it. You can get 3% already from Bloodthirst, so it's 3 right there. You can get lifesteal from a variety of places. I have it on my Immortal King's belt. You can get lifesteal scorns. If you're dual wield, you can get lifesteal weapons on both of those. So it just depends on how you play, what monster power you're at, how much damage you're taking. But between 4 to 6 is really the amount of lifesteal that you want. You can go higher if you want to be tankier. I run 5.9 right now, and the only way that I really die is sequential insta-give moves like multiple Dark Berserkers or multiple Savage Beasts on top of AoE. It's just a lot of things have to line up to kill me right now, so you really don't need a too terrible amount of lifesteal, so that'll kind of help with the gear. So for the end of the first video, I just kind of want to go over the rotation that we use in this build. There is a minor rotation. Depending on the situation, there's 2. And the first one I'm going to cover is assuming that you have Wrath of the Berserker up, or that you're about to. As you run into combat, you're going to cast Warcry and Frenzy on the first mob, and then the first chance that you get, you're going to cast Battle Rage. So you should be able to get that immediately. Then you're going to focus on getting Frenzy to 5 stacks. Now, if you see your life is getting low, go ahead and cast Rend, get the life on hit, or get the lifesteal procs from it, and continue to get Frenzy to 5 stacks. When you get Frenzy to 5 stacks, you're going to cast Rend. Immediately after, you're going to start spamming Hammer of the Ancients. You can usually get, depending on your attack speed, between 3 to 5 hammers off before the icon for Frenzy gets about right here. That's when you want to stop. Whenever you see that, you're going to go ahead and reapply Frenzy and hit Rend once more, and then continue to do hammers. I will typically get about 4 hammers off before I have to reapply Frenzy and then Rend. So it might vary depending, especially if you are dual wield Barbarian, you might get a lot more out. So just in general, if Frenzy's about right here, reapply it, you go back to that. If you are under the effects of Wrath of Berserker and your Fury is maxed and you're having a hard time getting your Fury dump while casting Hammer during that part of the rotation, you will also cast Battle Rage to dump an additional 20 Fury per attack. This will just help you to get rid of the Fury and allow you to generate more through crits. You can use Warcry as a 20 Fury burst to get part of it. You only need 25 to get a second added on to Wrath of the Berserker, so something to take into consideration. Whenever you're chain pulling mobs, you just want to utilize Frenzy and Rend. Just Frenzy, Rend as you're pulling to make sure that you're getting the lifesteal from everything that you're hitting, and trying to get Frenzy stacks and keeping them as high as you can while rending until you decide you want to kill everything that you pulled. Now, if you don't have Wrath of the Berserker up, your rotation is going to be exactly the same. Just don't worry about casting Battle Rage. You won't need to. You'll be doing fine on that. So that's going to be the end of this first video. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here, and I'm going to leave a link to part 2 down, hopefully, somewhere in this corner, and I will be showcasing this build a little bit in Monster Power 10. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video so far, and I will see you